straight. It's my way or the highway. So anybody wants to walk, do it now.
Let's see. Hey, there it works. Hi, Chip. What's happening, man? Chip's crawling around my feet. Welcome to the morning show, everybody. We're easing in this morning. Had to hook my computer back up, and some of the stuff, let's see, that I was working with has to be repositioned, redone. Let's see. Let's go. Send me. Hold on. We go to preview mode, so I'm not. I know the music's loud. We'll deal with it. Here we go. This is the one I want. Let's go to this one. Hey. Now that's better. Now I'm the only one hearing the music. Publish back to live mode, and then we just let the music fade out, shall we? Bring it down a little bit. Good morning. How you doing? Hello. It's HAL SPARKS Mornings, Mega Worldwide special Good Friday edition. There might be a lot more of you in here today because you might have the day off, or there might be a lot fewer of you because you are someplace atoning for your sins. Which either one is fine with me, honestly. Some of you, quite frankly, and I'm not going to name names, tisk tisk. That's all I'm saying. It's well within my rights, as judgmental as I am with myself, to be equally judgmental with you. Okay? Deal? Can we call it a deal? It's a deal. And let's see. Let me turn on my chat so I can converse with you guys. Now, at some point in the next... He's walking over there. In the next 8 minutes, it is very possible that Chip will decide that he wants to be in my lap and hobble over here on his own. Chip is the cat. uh, he's among many cats, but he's a cat among cats. Nope, he's going upstairs right now. Hey, Chip, leave Maddie alone. Psst. Hey, don't even. Maddie, Chip. Maddie's our pretty orange cat, and she's kind of dumb, but she's very beautiful. She's a supermodel. No offense to supermodels. If you ever meet one, tell them I'm sorry. And Chip, and Chip wants to play, and she does not. And hold on one second. I'll be right back with a cat. Hey, what are you doing? Psst, psst. What are you doing? See you. Jerk. Might as well be a jerk with us. That's what I. That's what I think, Mr. Jerk. That's what I think. That's what I think. What were you doing? What were you doing to Maddie? What were you doing? What were you doing? Oh, get your butt under there. There you go. Hi. Heather, what were you doing? Were you being mean? Were you being mean to Maddie? Hmm? What were you doing? Were you being rambunctious? That's what it was. He's getting bigger. He is. I will eat you. You will be an eaten cat. You've heard of Wheaten Terriers? This is an eaten cat. This is an eaten feline. Watch your jokes. All right. Do I have a chip on my shoulder? I have a more often than not, I have a chip on my lap, which I think speaks well of me as a human being. It is better. This is today's Sparksism. It is better to have a chip on your lap than a chip on your shoulder. Amen. Today is also the day that I think the first like religiously political joke I ever wrote when I was a young stand-up. And I was just still in high school, and I was like, I I made a Good Friday joke about, you can tell Jesus didn't name the day. Great for us. Our sins are forgiven. We're solid, rock solid. Not so much for him. Good's not a word I would use. I mean, it had to happen. Sure. Uh, is it a blessing? Fine. Good? I've had better. Um, why couldn't I have done this when in centuries from now when they've created salve, that kind of thing? So yeah, Jesus died for a metaphor, um, for a joke. No, oh, it's a have fun this weekend. Jesus is kind of tied up. Yeah, Suicide Squad attack. Right. Um, Life of Brian. I mean, I think it's worth a watch to watch Life of Brian. And even still, there is Python caught a lot of shit from the Christian community in England, not the community in general, but like the Church of England specifically, the spokespeople for God, the people who make their living, you know, selling God like a Lincoln, um, were very pissed off. People who actually have faith or believe usually don't get that upset about shit. It's the dudes who make their living, um, off of whatever the religious practice is that tend to get a little itchy when anybody calls it into question. You know what I mean? It's interesting. I mean, obviously that applies to political ideologies as well, but in specific, m- most believers, unless their life depends on it, like the person who runs their sect is going to kill them if they're seen as heretical. In modern era, most people are slowly but surely over time becoming laissez-faire, religion, laissez-faire faithful, live and let live faithfuls. And that's great for most faiths because faith is a it's immensely personal, and once it goes beyond the personal, it can divert from true faith into um, external moralizing and control structures. And I find that religious and philosophical beliefs only serve the good that they are alleged to serve in the world, if indeed you apply them to yourself first and foremost. There's I believe it's a um, Marcus Aurelius quote. I have to look it up. Um, uh, I think it's strict with yourself, charitable with others, something like that. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. That's what, to me, that's what faith is. That's what religious symbology is about. These are referential things, whether you believe in the absolutism of them or if you believe they were all metaphorical, is effectively a meaningless argument, considering the whole purpose of whether they were actually real and they actually happened to actual people, or if they are symbolic messages. The question is, what do you take from it, and what are you going to do about it? If somebody tells you a story or sings you a song that changes your life, or somebody tells you a story of a battle that somebody was in and that changes your life, what's the commonality? The commonality is you changed your life based on something you heard. You experienced in the material world neither. One operated as a metaphor, one operated as a true story. But it's the behavior that was affected, what you take from it, what you do with it. And so that's the only area wherein I would caution my atheist friends to not allow the people, like I said, who make a living off of religious or political beliefs. Don't allow those people, to speak for everybody else, but also you have to treat it skeptically with the awareness that a person who treats people well because a song they heard reminds them of it all the time is wholly different than someone who treats people different because if they're caught or treats people well, because if they're caught treating people poorly, they would lose their livelihood or their authority or their position. And that's the crucial difference. And I think a distinction worth being reminded of regularly. And if religious holidays of any sort have any value, it's that particular reminder. That's what faith is about. Did it happen in physical form on this earth plane in this current reality thousands of years ago? Is it an ongoing metaphor for something that happens to every human every day? Yes and no, both. Who cares? The question is, what are you going to do about it? The question is, knowing that, what place does that bring you to? Because personally, I honestly don't care if it was a true story or not. I care about your reaction to a story and whether or not it makes you a better person. And that goes for people who are agnostic or atheist. I find that anybody whose atheism posts spike around religious holidays has less to do with their belief and more about their hostility towards either the way they were brought up or their fear of their fellow man. The idea is that some atheists, and I would say basically everybody who works at Raw Story, sees this as religion is a generalized catch-all for their opinion that most people, not them, of course, are stupid, are gullible and dangerous. And that if one Pied Piper shows up, they're all going to be led into the sea. And their fear is that they are between this crowd and the sea and therefore will be shuffled into the water. And so they have a hostility towards the idea that these assholes will stampede them if somebody tells them to. And it's a very self-centered opinion about these ideas. And ultimately, in my estimation, and I guess suppose there is no one true Scotsman idea about this, is that a true atheist could freely understand people's belief systems, that there are varying belief systems that come and go during the course of a life. But the root of it, the worth of it, is your ethic, your moral, your response to the world, to your fellow human beings, to your responsibility in this life, if you have any at all. And that's where I think the ethic, if you really want to split the conversation, and I don't think you have to, between, I think it's kind of, well, there's three sides, right? So there would be the atheistic nihilist concept of ashes to ashes, dust to dust. This is it. Once you die, there's nothing. So what you do here is sort of meaningless. So morally, you really don't have any rules. There isn't really a good or a bad. There's no any. It's just pleasure if you want it and pain if you like it. Right? That would in the extreme. Then there would be the extreme of the religious idea, which is that there is one true God that is controlling all this. I'm going to be judged at the end of this life and spend eternity, however dozens of years I spend on this planet. The rest of my eternal existence will be judged by my short time here, and as harshly as possible by a by an unforgiving God with very strict rules about its acceptance of humanity. And not only can I not live outside these very narrow parameters that someone who makes a living selling this told me, but if I do, not only will this idea that God will judge me after my life be upon me, but my neighbors and friends and the circle, the village, the place I live in will attack me constantly in the social pain of constant, moralizing, or the danger of having my head cut off because I was heretical, keeps me in line on the material plane. And then, you know, within those two extremes, which by the way, almost no one operates. This is like the electoral college and versus the pure democracy argument. This is like the left and right, the pillars of left and right radicalism. Almost no one, as noisy as they are online and in their own place, almost no one lives at those pillars. Almost no one spends their life there. There's people who sell it, but none of them actually participate in it. And by the way, Chad, I'm not ignoring you. I was just kind of on I was on a bit of a roll. The issue that often happens is that the extremes, because they can be very noisy, attempt to dictate a thought form as opposed to reflect it, because there are elements of that thought form that will depose them from power if allowed. So from a spiritual standpoint, that's happened many times over the millennia. I mean, Koresh is a great current example. The current dude who leads Scientology or whatever that shit is, the um, Applewhite and his wife and their Hale Bop community, Jim Jones. There are spikes of these people who go, yes, this religious belief has the accumulation of human endeavors inside of it, and in many ways an argument of the complexity of it, because the contradictions in the Bible can be seen as hypocritical, or they can be seen as reflective of the complexity of humanity, and that the as a guidepost for life, it can have an intrinsically complex roadmap in it, because life is meant to be full of depth and peaks and valleys. You're not just here to sail through. And even if you think you are, you're not going to. So it must reflect that in its reality, because if it was all just like, just smile, just look at this one dot on the wall, just make a dot on the wall, stare at it, and then blank your mind, and then all your problems will go away. And after it didn't work for 3 days, they'd string somebody up. So over time, the writings around all religions become either more complex in their writings and more simplified in their spoken word. And so you get mega churches based on selected readings. When I grew up in as a Christian in Kentucky, we went to Peaks Mill Christian Church. One little thing, I was baptized there when I was 11. You didn't even have to till you're 13. I went to church camp, read the Bible twice all the way through before I was 14 years old. And because if you're going to do something, do it right. And I recognized that there's a distinction between sort of the normal run of the mill preaching that happens in these mid-sized and small churches and the mega churches, where it's an industry. And you know, it always struck me that the sermons you would hear in those situations, because I also went to like these like Christian rock shows in Lexington, because like I was a Kiss fan, and the pastor at our church was trying to shed it from me, like, you like rock, don't you? Go to this rock thing. I'm like, yeah, I'll have a good time, but it's not the same thing. Please quit it. But I noticed that the way they spoke at those things seemed a lot more like a convention of car salesmen than it did sort of the grassroots. Did I handle snakes? Yes, but not in church. Um, just because I was a redneck kid and there were snakes all over the place. But not in a way where I was like, I shall not be bitten because of fuck that. No. I am pure spirit. Like, only, I mean, can you imagine the ego that is required? I mean, if it's anything, it's a manifestation of ego. And when you have manifestations of ego like that and people make their living on it, it gets more extreme. That's how those kind of things happen. That's how snake handling happens. That's how all that shit occurs. Because over time, it becomes a circus. And the circus, once you've seen the circus, then you need to see Cirque du Soleil. And then you've seen Cirque du Soleil, you need to see Cirque du Soleil on fire on a rotating panel. Like it's like a drug, because it's about a fake high, as opposed to what I would say is religion at its best is a method of moral and spiritual hygiene. A weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, whatever you do, every 6 months, recognition of your own failings as a human being, a an image of what you could be, whether believable or not, whether real or imagined, that you can set as a standard for yourself that you would hope to achieve, be it Jesus or Buddha or the many variations of Buddha, um, that you can go and go, all right, that's the ideal. I'm not going to hit that. This is where I am. What can I shed? So you have things like Lent and those kind of things that come up because it's a material act of everybody in the community is going to shed one of their, baser instincts for a while, just to show you can, just to remind you that you can. I'm not going to do this for 30 days. I'm not going to do this for 90 days, whatever it is. if you do that without some sort of idea that anybody's ever done it or that it's possible, it's very difficult. But if there's this idea that you can, so many gods, which one should you pick? Benny Loco, the idea is that they are all faces of the same entity, and it ultimately doesn't matter as long as it makes you, in my estimation, a better person, more charitable and more good. Uh, Albert Pike said, everyone is welcome to their own unique mistake, that all religions point in the same direction, and that ultimately, at their best, without the, the inherent failures of man, which, by the way, show up in any business endeavor, any, um, you know, any governmental endeavor, you don't get to dodge these just because you're not religious. They show up when people, when opportunistic people find an opportunity. The way you deny them that opportunity is recognize that you're not extending your the control of your life to a subsidiary of your particular view of God, but to the vision of God that it would have as a benevolent creator for you. As long as you hold on to that, and it will make you your best self. If there's a David Koresh between you and that being, then you're in trouble. So it's not about what God you pick or what version of God resonates with you or what one you were born with, in your tribe that everybody has a tradition based around. That's immaterial. It's how it reflects in your behavior. And many people, especially in the United States, whether they view themselves as Christian or not, operate within what is, Christian values, the old school kind of Christian values of kind of do unto others, that kind of idea, golden rule. And that's a good thing, whether you believe it applies to religious behavior or not. Is sort of immaterial. That's off the point. The point I was trying to make is that you will see reflected in the external world, be it religious symbology, political figures, business leaders, your family members, animals at the zoo. You will see reflected in those things characteristics of yourself that you either are proud of and want to grow, or are ashamed of and wish would just go away. And that's especially when, like I said, when religious holidays or rituals come about, whether it's weekly Sunday, Wednesday night church, if you grew up in the South like I did, or Christmas for that matter. The beauty of those religions at that moment and the ability to be calm enough in your own beliefs to not be offended by anybody else's is is important work, I believe. Because I went through my phase where I was grossed out by, that I thought evangelical mega church pastors defined what Christmas was now, and that it was also just a, a usurped pagan holiday that was used for, to sell toys. Fine. It can be all those things, but it's none of those things in my life. Easter can absolutely be the festival of Ishtar, a fertility holiday usurped by the Ahura Mazda Persians that later translated into Christianity as it made its way up through Europe. And the reason there are eggs and chocolate is because chocolate has a chemical in it that makes you feel like you're in love. People are more likely to have sex when they feel like they're in love with a person. They're also more likely to orgasm. A woman's more likely to orgasm when she's in love with someone than when she's not, and therefore chocolate would kind of be the early emotional lube for a relationship, and eggs were referential to fertility and rabbits. What do rabbits do all the time? So the original pagan holiday of the Feast of Ishtar was based on eggs and rabbits and chocolate, and that grew over time. It also aligned with this time of forgiveness. Now, one of the reasons why the, you know, some of the more puritanical Christians wanted to recognize Easter during this time was in a puritanical or Quakerish affront to the sort of hedonistic aspects of, yes, of 5 eggs. Yes, there should be 5 eggs in your Easter basket. So saith HAL this year. um, the reason that they wanted it on this particular holiday and why it over time kind of linked over was because it was supposed to stiff arm it, when in reality they ultimately absorbed each other. And all that can be true and not matter at all to your expression in the world. On the one hand, if you want to have a kid, now's a really good time to do it if you're an agrarian Northern European society, around the area of, Germany and the Ukraine, Ukraine and the areas around there, France and England, if you're in Finland and Sweden, if you're in that area in the 14th century, now would be a good time to think about having a kid, because the last snow's breaking. Your pregnancy will mostly happen during the summer when there's a lot of harvested food, so you and the kid will eat very well, and then you can have the baby in the winter. There's enough stored food for the mother to produce milk, and then the kid will make it through the winter. This is how agrarian societies did it. So you line up your fertility holidays with the best practice time to get knocked up. Valentine's Day is the first day of that window. Easter's the Feast of Ishtar is the last day of that. So that if you get in early, chocolate and roses and that kind of stuff, let's get together and dance. And then, where's my 5 egg shirt? That's a good question, Diane. It's upstairs. I should have worn it today. I'll do a special Easter show and I'll wear my 5 egg shirt. How's that? So this being a fertility window to protect the pregnancies and the mothers as best they could, pre-medicine, all the knowledge we have today, and of course our ability to have air conditioning and central heating. That's what you did to keep you and your kid alive. Now, another aspect of that timescape is the seasonal affective disorder peaking around Christmas and easing up around Easter. Slowly as the days get bigger, this is the beginning of spring and the beginning of summer. So there's a release. So the idea that you would be released from sin because of your anger and fear. And remember, everybody who lived through winter or harsh desert climates during, sections of the year where it got worse. And again, like deserts, as you know, are brutal when it's cold as well. More people die of hypothermia in deserts than die of heat stroke and dehydration. Is that, in the other societies where the weather is slightly different, closer to the equator, south of there, in the Sudan and Israel and in Iran and those areas, this window is depression, and this went up into Europe too. It linked up, and so there was a lot of overlap in this. But the idea is that the days get very short. You need a sense of hope. The birth of Christ is a sense of hope, even though the idea is that historically Jesus was probably born in the summer, June, around then. The idea was that the holiday would fit very nicely in there because it offers a sense of hope at a time when suicides spike. So you get people through that. You go, there's going to be a spring. This is there's a birth anew. There's something to look forward to, life. And your life has a purpose, and the goodness you do in the world has meaning. Those kind of things. So you latch onto those things as a way of shedding the seasonal affective disorder that affected all peoples and early peoples and still do to this day. We just fix it with little like bedside lamps and stuff like that. And then as that arc of time spreads over, it gets difficult, because even after that day, winter continues. It can be the harshest winter in January and February in some areas. And you might, quite frankly, think some awful thoughts when you're starving and you're running out of crops and the winter's extending and that fucking gopher saw his shadow and you're going to have 2 more weeks of winter and you're cooped up with the same people in these log cabins and tents and lean-tos, and you're fighting the elements and all this stuff. And you might even do something during that time that isn't indicative of your best self in these times, in the 12th century and 13th century and the 14th century. And you're aware of that guilt, and you know it's wrong whether you're religious or not. And the idea of someone dying for your sins and saying, I get it. The burden you have as a human being is overwhelming at times. You feel you might be crushed under the weight of it. And the shame of falling to your weakness might be too much. I'll take that from you and go. And all you got to do is believe that that they're gone, that I did this and they're gone, and you'll be free of them. You'll be able to renew yourself in the world. The end, rehab, understanding that this idea that it's done. You can start fresh. And that that belief, that concept has enormous value in general. Forgiving yourself, metaphorically, of all the stuff that you think you deserve karma for, that you've made restitution for. You, if you're a caring person, a lot of times you can do everything you can to make something right, and you still feel bad about it, right? So you carry that with you, and that weight over time is like, it's like a stone in your pocket. And after a while, lots of stones in your pocket will slow you down. And so the idea is that religious symbology like this, like Easter Sunday, like Good Friday, and a myriad of other versions of this, are a moment where socially everybody within this group recognizing it's okay to drop it. You know what? I don't even need to hear you're sorry anymore. It'd be nice enough if you were just a good person from this point forward. So just let it go. Right? Oh, thanks, Birdie. So, when you look at religious holidays and you understand the times from which they came, where they were birthed out of, what they were birthed out of in society, what they represent, maybe this is an opportunity, whether you believe any of it or not, or whether you were even hostile to the concept or not, that it wasn't just some sort of magical overlay that some person forced people to believe every day of their life, every minute of their life, and go to church every, twice a week in some cases, or every day, whatever, or pray every day at a certain time. That forcing people to do that is never going to work. But if it answers a question that everyone has, that allows them to get back up in the face of horrible atrocities and dangers and illness and all kinds of stuff, and they're able to just stand again before, the written word, much less the internet, that all these traditions and these holidays and these, the stories around them were crafted out of that time to solve a problem that had gone unsolved up to that point. That the death and sadness and, the suicide from the sun the days getting shorter happened for centuries. And then somebody just decided it's time to start giving people a day of hope. Whether you believe it was, an actual being, an extratemporal being that showed up in the form of a Buddha or an angel or a wood sprite or Christ or any of those things is sort of immaterial. Whether it was somebody who just made up the story. The truth is, it worked. Anything can be weaponized, anything can be bastardized. Um, you can kill someone with their own medicine that was keeping them alive by overdosing them on it. That is not the medicine's fault. And it also does not reflect on the people who originally prescribed the medicine in the first place. HAL, it's a made-up story. Uh, every story is made up. And that doesn't matter. You're not listening. What I'm saying is that during these times when people are believing their made-up story that you decry and you are disgusted by, there was a period to which, in large part, it made them better people. And part of that was allowing them the space to believe it without going every time you hear them talk. That if you are without charity because you believe they are without charity, there is no moral high ground, and there is no worth to what you're saying at all. Thanks, Central Screw. Good, Pamela. I'm glad you get it. Yeah, again, and Karen says, then there's the money-making deal. Again, you are allowing, when you say things like that, your belief in the inherent evil of man, the ubiquity of evil, to cloud your view of your fellow humans. When you look at religious holidays or religious practice, and you go, it's all a big scam. They're buying this story. They're being manipulated. It's crowd control and manipulation. It's a giant overlord. There is no difference in that thought than the people in the mega churches who say the devil is all around us. It's in everyone that's not us. And those people are inherently bad. It's the same thought form. You are creating a Satan of the gaps for the behavior of all other people. It's no different. To look at people, who were Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Wiccan or, Seventh-day Adventist, I don't know, whatever. They're like these variations, the subsects of sex and whatnot, and decry them as, baited fools is to engage in the exact same behavior that the worst preachers among them teach. The ones we don't like, the ones that aren't indicative of the best characteristics. If something makes you a better person, who cares what you believe in? Yeah, that's the essence of it. I was not cussing today. Hallelujah. I swore 3 times already. You just didn't notice. I'm sorry that happened to you, Peter, but that has nothing to do with other people. That has nothing to do with belief. That has to do with an authoritarian structure in one particular expression of that. If it happened in a prison, that wouldn't mean get rid of prisons and let all the Edmund Kempers out on the street, right? That's all nonsense. The Christian church, what? Manipulated. Hold on. Sorry, when things jump around. But I'm a good person and I believe in nothing. That's not true. People who tell me they were never manipulated by religion, I ask them to use a clock, do you use a calendar, you member of a political party? That's not the same thing. Like, like using a clock doesn't mean that you are overridden by an idea that time is a permanent concept. It just means you use it as an interactive point with your fellow humans because nobody can go outside and look where the sun is every. I'll meet you when the sun is. See where that tree is? Well, that tree isn't where I am. Oh, let's set some sort of standard so we know what we're talking about. That's not a religious belief. If you believe that time is, permanent based on a calendar, that these aren't referential years. Like nobody believes, except the most extremes. And again, nobody operates on these polars. And saying that we do in and of itself is a polarity of its own. There are three polarities: the religious absolutism, the atheistic absolutism, and the everybody's in one of those other absolutism, which is unfair. Yeah, concept of time and calendars had nothing to do with religious belief. There was no beginning. Well, that's the argument too. Is that when you talk about the Big Bang, and you talk about the creation story that's in the Bible. I mean, this if you ever read the Tao of Physics or any of the Zachariah Sitchin alien stuff, even the idea that these stories it, aren't too far apart. Chip's okay. He went upstairs to lay down, I think. Please define atheistic absolutism. It's a form of atheistic nihilism where not only are we just sort of DNA acting out its expression, there's no intelligence to it either, and that there is no life beyond this one. When you're dead, you're dead, and therefore, if you're a murderer in this life or you're a Mother Teresa, it doesn't matter, and therefore do whatever makes you feel good. And if you know, I don't know, stabbing people makes you feel good, what difference does it make? Because there's nothing after this. You're not gonna be judged. Who cares? That's what that is. Yeah, that's it's the atheistic version um of religious fundamentalism or theocratic absolutism, which is if your God isn't my God, then you're dead. It's the same thing. And it's the same people in a lot of ways. They just use a different methodology. If my God says orgies every week, we have orgies every week. If my God says those people need to die so we can have their apples, so be it. The same thing is true of atheistic absolutism. If I need to kill somebody to get ahead, fine. If I can look great to the community and get laid more often because of that, then fine. Yeah, it's a nihilistic psychopathology. Killing in the name of religion since its inception. No. As a matter of fact, a lot of religion or religious beliefs were seeded in the idea that we need to stop killing. And again, they were taken over by people who tried to seize them for their own uses. But that's not the primary interactivity. More people will cite religious wars, for example, as an indication of how awful religion is, without citing the lives saved on the day to day for millennia because people who were deeply religious uh, sacrificed their own lives or to save others because they believed it was the right thing to do. Those people, if you look at the volume of humans existing on the planet right now versus the volume of people that existed previous, is the growing part of that. There are more Christians who say, like after you, or Jews or Muslims who go, can I help you with that? Or help people like pick somebody up if they've fallen because they believe being good in the world is integral to their belief system on the day to day, that have saved more people who've fallen down a flight of stairs, who've been hit by a car, who've had a heart attack. All those people, you got to put those in the religious life column as well. You do, I mean, people don't, and I'm curious why they don't. I believe more suffering had occurred from religion than the lack of. Well, you would, there's no way to, that would be what's called an unfalsifiable allegation, because there is no space without it. And I would argue that the spaces without religion actually include these places you're talking about where religion isn't killing people, is the falsified religion itself. People who don't believe, who are like, these people are suckers, I can get them to kill on my behalf. That's not actually faith. Faith is not to blame in that moment. That's a manipulative person. The same way that, you know, most people are cool with you know, getting in a taxi or so. There's like did you ever watch the Sherlock Holmes series, the Cumberbatch series? And the killer in one of them, spoiler alert, is a cab driver because he fits in and most people feel comfortable getting in a cab. Is it the idea of cabs or cab drivers in general and the conversations they have with you that's intrinsically bad? No, this man just didn't believe that that was real, but knew that other people were comfortable in cabs, trusted them, trusted talking to a cab driver, figured they'd get to go where they work because every time they went in before it was fine, and he took advantage of that. That is not the fault of cab drivers. That is not the fault of any more than David Koresh is technically the fault of true religious believers. Does that make sense? Stop Jim Jonesing us. Well, he would be an example of that. I would call bullshit on somebody like Jim Jones's faith. I think he just found a way to manipulate people he thought were suckers. Because I don't believe Manson believed what he said he believed, right? Yeah, who doesn't have Hunter's laptop? Yes, Hunter's laptop is a religious artifact right now. It is the ark of the it is the current Ark of the Covenant. It's beautiful. Mhm. My thing is, and this is the most crucial part of it, because I have no interest in instituting a religious faith in someone or removing it. I'm not in that business. I'm not in that world. This is just a personal conversation. What I am in the business of, and what I do care about, where I have, chosen in my life to do what you love and the money will come, is in the removal of bitterness from people's lives. That's ultimately the high art of comedy. That's what it's for. That I can, on the low end, I can lighten your mood temporarily, and I can cheer you up in that regard, and I can make you laugh and respond to something, some part of life that might have frustrated you in a way that lightens your mood about it. But ultimately, what's the goal of that? That is to take the bitterness, the sourness of experience in life away, to bring it down into a manageable area where it does not become a stone in your stomach, where it just something might be, aggravating at times, but it's still within the realm of you can laugh at it. You can still deal with it. You can still know that this too shall pass, right? And as a comedian, I believe you take these sour moments, these fears, these things that grind in your belly, and break them up with some regularity. That's my goal in life. That's if I have a mission statement on for my time on this earth, that's it. And so I also don't believe that the most important person on an assembly line is the last person. I think everybody along the way is equally important in an assembly line. And if I'm if I'm the person who tells a joke to you that turns on the light bulb in your head that goes, "Oh fuck, I've been miserable about this my whole life and I need not be." Great. If I'm the last person. But if I'm the third person that tells that joke and reminds you of it to get you to the next one, so you can be reminded again, to get you to the next one, to be reminded again, so that finally you'll be alive and functioning when you do hear that last joke, that note, that song, that verse, that idea, that moment in conversation that frees you from that shit. If I played a part in making sure that you don't fall into the gap, that, I mean, what an extraordinary thing. Maddie just walked by. Hold on. She knew I was about to start tearing up. Maddie, come here. What are you doing? Maddie, come here. It's okay. Come here. You don't have to run away. She doesn't want to. She's not having it. Thought I'd be able to get a cat. That's the, to me, and it's why I love, if you'll notice all the posters behind me, with the exception of this beautiful thing right here, which is something I was part of, these are all pulp movies. Fletch, Vibes, Man with Two Brains. There's not, I don't have like posters of Schindler's List or something like that, as important and powerful as those movies are. I don't have them up in my home. Um, because I believe in the purity of this kind of thank you. Yes. Lab Rats is not pulp. It is pulp. It's just pulp that I've been a part of. These are the other movie posters that um I fundamentally believe in that release for humanity. A poster of my butt would be good. I agree. I should get one of those queer as folk all man posters that I did. Cheers, Steve. Be well. Um, how do these folks go from Jesus to Trump? Fear. Fear. That's how. You want to change those people's minds within your own ethical system, with your in your own ability, alleviate some of their fears. If your goal is to make them more afraid, they're just going to cling to it. Also, if you're using quote unquote religious freaks or religious extremists or opportunistic people like the people on Flashpoint as indicative of religious people, you're committing the same sin that they're committing about you. And at some point, if you believe your system is better than theirs, act on it. Because while I joke about the the people that I do on my show and I definitely have my issues with them. And I definitely believe that my moral path is higher than theirs. In the same instance, if they were struck by a car, I I would get them out of the street and perform CPR on them and try to make sure they live. Period. End of story. No question ever. Moral arguments and uh, philosophical arguments, political arguments, as emotional as they might be, happen when someone's living in front of you, and that's just it. That's I'm not. And some people disagree with me on this. So a lot of people get upset that I don't, I will never call for physical violence against someone for words or you know anything short of you attack me physically, you're done. And I feel great comfort in that because I would never spend my physical aggressive energy on someone who didn't deserve it. But if somebody did and it was very clear cut, it's just got to be over. That said, the vast majority of people are never going to be in that position. So what they say is going to extrapolate to someone else hearing it, someone else hearing it, someone else hearing it, someone else hearing it, and then someone acting on it. And I will not participate in that. Absolutely not. And I, I hear people all the time, the but they have to, but these people, but they, I don't care. That's, if that's where you want to live, then knock yourself out. I will not be joining you. It's an interesting statement, Benny Loco, because everyone lies. If they, in the purest sense, if they curtail their absolute feeling in a moment. Now, sometimes, and I will say a caveat on that, that the little white lies that people talk about, that people say, well, I didn't say exactly what I was thinking because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, don't necessarily fall under the absolutism of being a lie, because you are unsure about your right or will or belief in that statement, or you would say it fully. So you're not technically lying. You're saying what you're saying. All of you. It's basically the idea that everybody's doing their best all the time, because if you could do better, you would do better. You're like, but people could do better. No, they couldn't, or they would. Something's holding them back. And if you can change something in their life that helps them do better, do it. And if you don't, it's because you can't yet. So you have some work to do on yourself. And that brings us sort of back around to the meaning of Good Friday, right? I sound agnostic, do I? I don't know, what does an agnostic sound like? Like a baritone radio voice? Oh, thanks, good karma. Coming from you, that means a lot. Circular thinking. Anything holding me back? Sure, of course. Now, some of them are on purpose, much to the chagrin of my theatrical representation. I have, over the years, turned down projects that they were convinced would be very good, and in some cases may very well have been, but I morally disagreed with, or I felt did not serve a valuable purpose, or sold a mixed message, or contributed to the myth and illusions about that people carry around about ill will towards their own governments, their own fellow citizens, soldiers, police officers, FBI, blah, blah, blah. You guys know how I feel about that stuff. That I chose not to do those things. That, by the way, would have been very lucrative. And that led my agents, especially at the time, a couple of them, because I've changed agents over the years a couple times. I would say just not. It took the spring out of their step when it came to finding me projects. The best example is, before I got TalkSoup, I had one primary agency, and then there was a period where I had I shifted agencies for every other year. I would do these big stand-up shows that I would put on for my friends. My friends and I couldn't get time around LA at the bigger clubs. We were always muscled out by people. Famously, I finally got a set at the Comedy Store, and Damon Wayans came in and was on stage for 3 hours, and my slot that was originally for 10:15 was now 1 a.m. and I was like, those kind of things. So it was just, you're just ice skating uphill all the time. So I decided at one point to start doing stand-up nights, and not just doing an open mic space or something like that. I used my own money to pay for four of my friends and I to do a stand-up night at Largo and a couple of other places where I would rent the place out. Cost me about $1,500, and then I would flyer the thing, and I would send flyers out to casting directors and to coaches and just everybody in the business, whoever could get me a window. Yeah. No, at Largo. And thanks, the 420 God, appreciate it. And this is mid 90s or whatever, the Sisyphus years. And my friends weren't doing this. I did this, and I was like, guys, you want to do I'll just anchor the show, but you guys can each do I'll do 15 minutes and I'll do a half hour, and there you go. And I would get a new agent, and then I'd be with them for about a year, and they really wouldn't do much, or they would be mad because a lot of the ones that come to those kind of things, agents that come to those things, aren't your deep reads theatrical agents that'll get you a Meryl Streep movie or something like that. They're the kind of people who are like commercial agents go to those. They look for comics. They don't think you can act. So if a theatrical agent's coming to see a comedian, more than likely they're looking at somebody who will either end up on a sitcom at best and mostly just print money for them, being the new Flo and all the insurance ads. And that's what they're looking for. So they're not really looking for you to actually do anything of merit. And so I would sign with people because they would have a theatrical area, but they were largely commercial. And I don't do alcohol or pharmaceutical ads. I will not. And I didn't then, and I'm not going to start now. And there are other stuff that if it came along, I would genuinely look at the product and, whatever. Like there's an audition for, Exxon or some shit for it's a regional series of ads for, some gas company or something. And I was just like, nah, pass. And they would dump me, after a year, because I'm not going to do it. Do you even cath, bro? That's right. I do a catheter ad. That's not a problem. Those are supposed to be real people, though. They'd have to put actor doesn't really use tube and penis. I would insist on that precise chiron. So I would, that I would have an agent for a year, and then they would go away because I just wouldn't do that shit. Right? And I don't blame them, because they've got to make a living, and they make a living as a temp agent for actors doing specific temp jobs. That's their gig. It's okay. Just not what I'm going to do. So no harm, no foul. Bye-bye. So yeah, cat food ad in a heartbeat. Slap chop. Thanks, sports. I'm glad you appreciate that. Apparently, no, I could have done the ShamWow ads, but apparently I wasn't creepy enough. So, anyways, I would do that, and agents would not understand why I even thought I had the right to say no. They were always confused. Recently, a couple years ago, a series came up that my agent and my manager sent me. And with the idea, they sent me the sides and the breakdown of the series. And the character was to play a racist white guy in this series, a comedy series. And the character itself was always doing constant microaggressions was the idea. That was the basis of this character. In this hub of apparently the most diverse office in the world, somehow this dude works there. And it was a sort of it was an integral part of the cast, but the writing was such that it was just grotesque. It was mean-spirited. It attributed a mean-spiritedness to this character that if it truly exists, he wouldn't be in that office for more than a week. It's absurd. And so it was really concocting a fanciful version of this ongoing character who just treats people like shit, just gets away with it all the time, because that's how life is when it fucking well isn't. And in a pulp setting, if you're going to make that case in a drama or even a dramedy like This Is Us or something, I think there's value in that. But turning something that would be effectively that serious, like racism in the workplace, into I don't know, it's kind of cute. We got a couple. You know what it is? It was to audition to be the puppet on Jeff Dunham's lap. We want to make all these racist jokes. We want to be racist. We think it's funny. We want to have our cake and eat it too. So we're going to write these shitty racist jokes and then have everybody go, oh, you, against that person. And I was like, that's gross. Fuck you. Well, All in the Family was a gold standard for that because he was a primary character and it was about the family changing them during this time. This isn't about something that's actually occurring in a massive amount. This is not 1972. Like, anyways. So I just said, I was like, flat no. And I gotta say, the agent that I had, who was like my front person at the agency, was very put off by the idea that I would say no to something like that. And I was like, yeah, I don't need it. I'm not clamoring. I don't know what the other actors you deal with are like, but I have a whole career doing stand up and music. Now I have you guys. Thanks. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Give a thumbs up. If you like the morning show, you're the only reason it exists. Thank you, patrons. The Patreons are 100% responsible for the morning show being created and actually turning into a thing. So thank you guys. But in the process of saying no to that agent was done with me. Like I didn't go out on anything else that year. Tons of stuff I was right for. They weren't even doing the work. There was, and finding someone else as a primary point person at the agency is a process. So it would take months for me to find somebody who wants to be my point person and fill in that thing that actually gets me and yada yada. How do you think? What do you think would happen if Jesus returned today? Long-haired Jew spouting liberal ideas of cons would kill him in a heartbeat. I've heard that. That's been around for a long time as a thought form. No. There was a guy walking around healing the sick with literally by laying on his hands, his hands on people, who was extratemporal, who could walk on water. And there was like, I mean, there'd be arguments about the Instagram video, but like, fuck, dude, have you seen this? It's all bullshit. There'd be that kind of stuff. Jesus was not an anarchist. That's like, anarchism has nothing to do with any other, like walking path. Am I a Buckeye? I was born in Cincinnati, but no. So TikTok Jesus, right? Oh, right. Oh, nice. You saw the Dennis DeYoung singing "Thanks Nails" by Sherry. That was really fun. Did you see the Jesus tweet? Right. Jesus did it for the bitches. What? You're welcome, DI42. Oh, thanks, Carol. Yeah, it's a very different idea, the morning show. So, yeah. Now, how do we're kind of bringing this. We're going to try to land this plane philosophically this morning because this show took a very distinct direction conversationally, and I appreciate you guys letting me turn the morning show into this occasionally, where we actually get to have a philosophical discussion about these kind of things, be above and beyond the material um, experience that you have. Just it's good space. It's good space for setting some lines. I often will tweet things about the fact that I don't drink and I don't do drugs, and I'm not going to, which is true. And when I tweet those things, people react to them as if I have started a debate, when that is not my intention. I was simply just letting people know what I do, where I am on it. And that position, whatever it may be, has come from a life of constant gardening. That not drinking and not doing drugs, while it was a primary decision I made when I was very young that I wasn't going to, like everything in life, needs renewal. And so I constantly, that's why you'll see me occasionally tweet like reason 44,972 why I don't drink when some story will come up. And over time, I've noticed in the way that I express it, how I might have said it early on, where people might have taken it more as a challenge or a dismissal. Because it's like when you text somebody and they don't know the context, they might think that your sarcasm is anger, your genuine statements are sarcasm, your joyful statement means the male, that kind of stuff. Because without that context, some people can mistake whatever the written word is. It's always a concern. Hence, by the way, part of the root of why some societies force illiteracy on their populace, because they were concerned about the Koreshes of the world, the Charles Mansons of the world, the Joel Osteens of the world. That even however they themselves might have turned into that very thing, and often the villain you're hunting is in your own head. That said, maybe that's why I don't believe in villains per se, except for like the obvious extremes. Yeah, we'll talk about that another time. That the way I've spoken about it and how I talk about it, both people I think have figured it out over time, and so it's less shocking. But there's always new people finding it out, and they will always read it as hostile if that's where they have their feeling about it. But how I express it has shifted over time to take into account people's preconceptions about what it means to them and what it means, what they assume it means for others. What about truckers? What was somebody yelling? What? We should what? Play Trucker Paul's video regarding Abbott's backup at the board. Oh, okay. I want reverse drug testing. I need to make sure you're taking drugs in the correct right. Yeah, no, I have no interest in mind altering drugs at all, because I believe that everything that they may present in your mind is already inherently there and is up to you to find. And I would rather climb the mountain than see the top by bouncing on a trampoline that eventually will give way under my weight and collapse and not work anymore. So, which is how those things always work. Yeah, I'm crazy enough. Thank you, Wes. Yeah, understand that everything you've heard today so far has come from a brain that has never experienced drugs. So please. Neuroplasticity. Well, it's what we hope for. um, and again, telling you, and this is how I believe religious speech. At, this is religious speech is at its best. It's the same with it political or philosophical. I'm just gonna political. It's a new word. I'm gonna make political or philosophical ideas. Their greatest value, and I would argue maybe the only time they have any value at all, is when they are spoken as an expression of who you believe yourself to be, or who you're trying to be, or what your ideals are, your baseline ethics, what you want to be. And you're speaking about those things to others to let them know who you are and what to expect from you. And then you live up to that expectation as best you can, with all the failures and faults and issues and false starts that humans have, which should be just understood. And if they aren't, the person you're talking to is a prick. Thanks, Midas. Midas Sue. Um, I say the things I say online, not as you people need to start doing this, but as an example of my personal ethic. And everything I say should be sort of taken as it. Now, I will castigate people because I will pick a fight largely with people who I believe are either hypocritical about their beliefs, completely moronic, but believe themselves to, from an egotistical way, to be deserving of power, when I will not allow that. Mockery is too important. A silly song did more to bring down King George than did all the protestations of the bishops. It is comedy as a method of social change is way better than a weapon. And if you hit somebody for a joke, you're fucking up the whole thing. No, there, there's ended the lesson. But when I say what I say, it is, sometimes on the right we talk about how every accusation is a projection, it's a confession. There's a positive proto side of that where when you say something out into the world that has to do with an ethic or a standard, that's also an affirmation of your own ethic and your own standard. And saying that there are none, asserting that there aren't any, is also just endemic of your own. So if you go, there are no rules about this kind of thing. Anybody who wants rules about this is just trying to be mean. Well, then that your rule is it should just that chaos reigns. My rule is chaos reigns in this area. And any attempt to have a conversation about it, any attempt to separate the wheat from the chaff, to set a path where people can be protected while that interrupts chaos, and therefore no. Thanks, Elizabeth. I I believe there is something beyond this life. I have words and descriptors I would use for it, but they are simply that. They are descriptions, not definitions, because I would not presume to know. You cannot fit God into the corpus callosum of a human being. It's not possible. We're not at that growth stage yet. If we were, we wouldn't be on Earth. And so this place serves as a school, I believe, for souls to get their shit together. And since I believe that, I spend a good deal of my time getting my shit together. Emotionally, morally, intellectually. And now there are areas where I disagree with the moral standard of, say, the greater societal structure on certain things, or I wouldn't have grown up a Kiss fan while everybody in my little Christian church was telling me, not everybody, mainly one particular preacher, and he was a temp, so who cares, but that it meant knights in Satan service, right? So I was being told that was wrong, and I was like, well, if being a Kiss fan is wrong, I don't want to be right. And so I make my own decisions about those kind of things, and there is a lot of gray area in the interpersonal, but there's some red lines, and I am no LSD for HAL. No, never. Reincarnation, I think absolutely could be a function. If you look at this place as a sim, which it very well has all the makings of, then what may be on this life, maybe beyond this life. And this is the example I've made. Okay, so where do we start? Okay, so the human beings we are now finding can, according to the Sense Foundation and others, our lifespan could be around 250 years, to the point where we could be fertile and able to have kids till we're 180, that youthful for that amount of time, with proper technology and medical interventions and gene therapy, stuff like that. So that's already working. Okay. And we know that now. Now imagine if we'd known that in 1801. Where would the science be right now if we knew that we could expand the human life to 250 years in 1801? And we were hundreds of years later. Much less in 1640. Imagine okay. So at some point in the future, year 3500, lifespan of the human being, so that you could travel through space, is 2,000, 3,000 years old. And we are wholly different human beings because we can live that long. And we practice forms of moral and emotional hygiene in a way that we don't go crazy and all that kind of stuff. Let's just understood that that's handled. But we still have kids. Even at thousands of years old, we still choose to have children, make a big, long decision about it, and we do have children. But in our world of people who live to be 3,000 years old, where we're all extremely mature and have gotten past all of our baser instincts and gotten that out of our system, we recognize that it wouldn't be smart to let anybody under 150 years old it wouldn't be smart to let them walk around in our nice, clean world full of 1,000-year-old people who've gotten over the part where we have to kill anybody for anything. We're way too smart for that shit. But we understand that it is a biological aspect of growth, that teenagers are going to be teenagers, and anybody under 100 is not going to have the wisdom to understand the depth of this, right? So what do we do with them? What do you do if humans live to be thousands of years old in the future? What do you do with your youth? Do you let them walk around? Do you put them on their own planet till they figure it the fuck out, and then they die, and then you sneak in and you take some of their DNA, and then you clone them and you go, hey, welcome back, whatever. Or do you create a sim, and then from the day they're born, instead of going to school, they live simulated lifetimes in these learning pods, where like in Inception, you could live an 80-year lifespan in a couple of hours. So instead of going to math class, like we would do and just learn week after week, day after day, you would go into this tube like sort of Neo from the Matrix, but on an interpersonal level, and you would live the life, the simulated life of a mathematician. You would live and die as the whole life of a person who learned and loved math, instead of just studying math from your perspective. You would live math from the perspective of this being, right? This person. And for all you knew, it was the greatest, like, math was everything to you, and it was beautiful. And that's how you learned it. And then you die as this person, and then your eyes are opened and you're inside this like goo cell floating like Luke Skywalker when he was injured by the Wampa. And they take him out, and they take you out and they clean you up, and you go, welcome back, and you're like, oh shit, right, yeah, this is me. I totally bought that. That was scary. Like, I had cancer at one point, and then I beat it, and then I was working on this project, and we discovered this postulate, and then I started working on this one team, and it was really cool. All right, English is next. Do you want to go back as a writer or a journalist? Do you want to go fiction? We got a lot of choices. You've done fiction already. You lived a life as a sort of Stephen King character. Do you want to? How about a journalist, investigative journalist? That sounds good. Do you want to die for your cause, or do you want to like be one of the person who writes books their whole life? Well, I need to learn how to write. That's one of the things I've always wanted to do. So how about somebody who writes just a shit ton of books? That's what I do. Okay, cool. And you go. And then you go into the tube again, and they numb your neural cortex so that you don't know who you are, and you start from scratch again, and you live your life. You live 80 years in this simulation as a writer who writes 100 books. And then by the time you're 100 years old in real years, in your real life, you've lived 10,000 lifetimes, which is what the Buddhists called nirvana. And maybe that's what they're talking about. Maybe after 10,000 simulations, you graduate into nirvana, which is actually the society beyond this, where you don't have to be in this earthly realm anymore because you've shed all that. And that the judgment of God that everyone talks about is the very fact that if you go through a life, you're like, hey, we're sending you to school, and today you're going to be, this is one of your normal lives. You got to learn, this is an empathy life. You're going to go through life, and you're going to learn what it's like to have the normal suffering of a human being. So you'll have empathy for other people who have had it in a very, not in a way that's abstract, but in a very physical way. You will remember what it was like to be, somebody who was scraping their whole life and never really got anywhere. So that if we encounter other aliens or other people or other societies like that, you will be sympathetic to them in a way you wouldn't have the capacity to be if you're just like, oh, these poor animals, right? And you go through that. In the middle of the life, you take a left and you become BTK. You're like, because you don't know who you are. So you just decide, fuck this, I'm going to kill people. And at the end of that life, they pull you out and they go, that's not cool. So you obviously don't understand the pain of victims. So we're going to send you back into 6 or 10 lifetimes in a row where you understand what it's like to be a victim at all stages. You're going to be killed as a child. You're going to be killed as a young adult. You're going to be killed as a man, as a woman, as a soldier, as a tortured victim, as a refugee. You're going to die drowning. You're going to go through all these things, so you know how awful it is. You can feel that, so you would never do that to somebody again. And then they send you back into the boring life again to see if it's connected to you, you understand it. Because if you have that impulse, you're not allowed out into the world. You're trying to get past that impulse that everybody might have. And after 15 or 20 horrible lifetimes, which the Hindus would call karma and the Christians would call hell, you either come to the conclusion that I don't want to be that way anymore, or it's intrinsic to your nature that you're fairly shitty and they just turn off the lights. It's like, well, the boring life is crucial in some of these, Patricia. The boring moments, that's what makes the sim real. All right? This is just theory. You get the point. This is a thought experiment. yes, you're watching HAL Sparks Mornings Mega Worldwide. We're a little more philosophical, especially on a religious holiday. We're talking about, it's Good Friday. So that in this sim, you would go back. You're not Douglas Quaid, exactly. You would go back again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And then until you understood the perspective of life from almost anyone. Right? The Matrix reimagined. Yes, think of it as the Matrix as a rom-com. Stand-up philosopher, a bullshit artist. And some people in the sim can volunteer occasionally as staff to help run it because they love kids. They love anybody under 100. They're adorable, the little brains. And they send those folks back into the sim to walk amongst everybody else. And if there's sort of a glitchy problem, like some people need to be handheld. So that's what like organized religion is early for some people. Like, hi, okay, stay within the lines. We'll help you. We'll guide you through it. Because in the real world, outside of this, they're toddlers. They're 2 years old. They're 5 years old. This is you're talking to an adult in this life, but they're really a 5-year-old, and that's why. So the 5-year-olds need guides, right? Now there are also bots in this because not all the characters are real. Because there aren't that many humans for all these possible interactions, and they have to be they got to de-res and re-res around you at all times. Some of them look alike. If you'll notice, you'll meet somebody like a Chinese dude who looks like this Italian dude that was a assistant principal in your high school, and then there's a guy on a TV show who's like, he's British and he looks vaguely like these three. There's like the features are the same. You're like, yeah, right. That would be the Matrix Black Cat idea, and these people come back and they guide some of those people through. And the people who don't need a guide anymore look down on the people who are there being guided until they learn the lesson that they at one point needed to be guided as well. But you're supposed to forget until anyway. So you've met my ex-husband. Did you bullshit this week? Yes. No. Did you try to bullshit? Yes. I had the money right in my hand. So all of these elements that I'm trying to explain to you is there's a lot of scientific belief in this in certain quarters that this is actually what's going on. And James Gates, Obama's science advisor, who was from I think it was University of Maryland, looks like a black Einstein, crazy hair, got a bit of a beard, really smart guy. Described in the study that they were doing of the planet. Maybe I can find it. Hold on. This would be fun. Hold on. It'd be fun to watch. James Gates. Neil deGrasse. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so let me see if I can find this for you guys. See if I can pile this on. So this was a great conversation. I love James. Sylvester James Gates is his full name. I don't know why it is. Okay, so Sylvester James Gates works on string theory. Let me see if I can do this. This guy open me up. Hold on. Yeah, so this is him. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Move this over here. Move me over here. Shrink me way down, and we'll talk about this. So this is a panel where this is Sylvester James Gates, Dr. Gates, and he was Obama's science advisor, one of his science advisors. And then I forget who the other two were. And this is Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they're having a discussion about the concept of string theory. And there's just a really important point about computer tech that this guy talks about. Hold on 1 second. Why is it the wrong? What's happening here? That is the. Okay. Which camera? Hold on. The black magic one. There you go. So I can be a little more in here. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. Some of you may have. But this, happy Good Friday.
Where has this pursuit taken you?
Oh my God.
Where have you landed?
Why would you ask that?
I'm asking you that here and now. It's New York City. It's March 7th.
Well, partly it's taken to these very strange images that are behind your head right now. These are pictures of equations. I've been, for the last 15 years, trying to answer the kinds of questions that my colleagues here have been raising. And what I've come to understand is that there are these incredible pictures that contain all the information of a set of equations that are related.
By the way, I know the sets of equations in graphic form look like UFOs or a UFO sandwich or two smiling space clams. I understand, but
The string theory. And it's even more bizarre than that, because when you then try to understand these pictures, you find out that buried in them are computer codes just like the type that you find in a browser when you go surf the web. And so I'm left with the puzzle of trying to figure out whether...
and what is a browser? It's a user interface for information. Just think about that for a second. It's a UI. That's what a browser ultimately is. A browser is a way of just loosely looking at the information available and delivering it to a way that your brain can take in terms of visual images, sound, and the written word.
I live in the Matrix or not.
Wait, you're blowing my mind at this moment. So you're saying, are you saying your attempt to understand the fundamental operations of nature leads you to a set of equations that are indistinguishable from the equations that drive search engines and browsers on our computers?
That is correct. So...
Wait, I have to just be silent for a minute here.
Yeah. Let that linger for a second. That's nowhere near what the next big mind fuck that's coming is.
So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos.
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
It's not just sort of resembles computer code. You're saying it is computer code.
Okay, wait. This is my favorite part of the whole thing. Because then I get to tell you guys who... all right. Hold on.
It's not even just is computer code. It's a special kind of computer code that was invented by a scientist named Claude Shannon in the 1940s. That's what we find very, very deeply inside the equations that occur in string theory and in general in systems that we can say are supersymmetric.
Okay. String theory and supersymmetry as concepts. I have my issues with string theory. I think it's kind of largely bullshit. That said, it floats in there with like dark matter. They're trying to solve some shit while they do it. Okay. But the fact that he wrote into this, and I just love, like, I hope you guys enjoy that. Okay, so Claude Shannon, the dude, this is really fun. So Claude Shannon worked with Alan Turing, and they call him the father of the information age. So this is here's quantum. Okay. This is like, and Claude Shannon, he looks a lot like let's see. He looks a lot like Clint Watts, if you think about it. Hold on. That's Claude Shannon. Claude Shannon worked with Alan Turing. And Turing, as many of you know, if you watch The Imitation Game, it's a heartbreaking story. Again, you wanna keep like foreign operatives from blackmailing people because they're gay, you make it okay to be gay. You don't go, oh dear. You go out to the society and go, we have a choice. We can lose all our great scientists and a lot of our great artists and stuff to possible blackmail over bullshit, or we can get over our bullshit. And the United States, by the way, recognized this earlier than almost anywhere else and has started on the road of getting over our bullshit for real. Because you can still blackmail a Saudi or a Chinese official or a Russian official for being gay. If an intelligence community from Saudi Arabia wanted to have control over some dude in the Russian military and he was gay, they could use it. In the United States, they'd go like, "We've got pictures of you with your boyfriend." And you're like, do I look good? Anyways, this is Claude Shannon, and I want to show you the title. This is in Quantum Magazine. Look at the title of this article. Claude Shannon invented the concepts behind user interface, UI, the browser. The idea that, yeah, we can have all these ones and zeros, but unless you have a program that allows you to understand it, like what Claude Shannon's why your desktop is a desktop on your laptop and it has folders and menus and things that you can interact with that allow you to access this information in a human-like way that references your physical life. So the question is, how far did it go? And how long ago was 1941? Was it really, 72 years ago? 82 years ago? Yeah. Or was it 81 years ago? Was it really 81 real years ago? Or was it thousands of years ago and you're living in an ancestor simulation that was created using the technology of Claude Shannon a millennia ago and dude's still alive or whatever? Like that, I love that thought experiment. That excites me. That interests me. Yeah. Yeah, go watch the Imitation Game. And Turing's whole thing was creating a computer that could calculate so quickly that it could decode things because they needed to be able to enter in all these possibilities and get something, right? And while Turing was focusing on that, Claude Shannon was eventually was working on the idea that we could create a way for you to access that information in a way that works with the normal ways of human interaction, like our file folders and shit like that. And that's the primary part of it. But if you take that to, like Meta's on the way, and if you look how clunky the idea of the metaverse or VR is right now, and you take the natural extension of that, what's that going to look like in 300 years? What's it going to look like in 30 years? Imagine, how many people in the chat room, throw a hand up, can remember what it was like to use a dial phone? And you weren't even, like, the last time you used a dial phone, that you were an adult, or at least 18, 19, right? A rotary phone, or even a push button phone, right? HAL used a crank phone, right? Yeah, if you remember, yes, those of you that remember the modem sound, like key scree boo da, and you like remember anybody who was excited at the idea of a 14.4 baud modem, right? So and now look at all the hands going up in the chat room. And I want you to think about what you're watching right now, which is me basically running this little television studio at the quality that was better than anything that happened in the 80s, off of a laptop and a Sony like handheld camera and a couple of lights, where I can interact with people all over the world in real time. We actually complain when the audio and the video gets out of sync. Like, oh, it's messed up, something's weird. Because we take it for granted that it will just fucking work. In the 90s, this would have been friggin' miraculous. And that has happened in less than your lifetime. In the last 200 years, the human race has gone from steam engines and hand-cranked cars and covered wagons as a primary form of travel to Mars rovers. So imagine in the same timescape, starting here, what's it going to be like in 200 years? It's extraordinary. And then the question becomes, since the human brain has not changed in any measurable way in, 25,000 years, let's say, how many times have we done this? Is Atlantis the story of that's what this earth is for? We build it up and crash it, build it up and crash it, build it up and crash it, we build it up and crash it. All for us to learn lessons beyond this temporal space or from the safety of a gel chamber on another planet. It's very much a possibility. Very much materially a possibility. And atheists can absolutely enjoy that version of extratemporal Earth life. Dear atheists, you do not have to believe that there is a spaghetti monster or a sky god on the other side of your death. It could simply be your fellow humans judging you based on whether you need to go back in the gel pod or whether they have to throw you away because you're just a fucking mess. That beyond this life, there may or may not be a God even beyond that. But beyond this life, there may be what's effectively a judgment day of just like quality. Yeah, sorry, you're just you're not, every time we send you back, you become more awful. You can't, you're not allowed in, right? Because we still allow you your humanity. We have to. So you go to Hell Planet or whatever. You go to Hades. Like the one with Jet Li. And Hoffman01 says it's a dirt nap. We go away. That's the other point I'm making, is that in this simulation, there may be simulated bots. People that they're people who are really people outside of it, who come in to learn their lesson, do stuff. And they interact with artificial beings, because we've learned that, unless you perfectly line up someone's need to learn to be a victim with someone's need to learn to be a monster, and the understanding that they can switch places, as Buddhist philosophy will talk about in reincarnation, that not everybody always lines up with somebody, and some of those victims need to be fake or whatever, and you get judged on how you treat someone, whether they're a bot or not. That atheists, I'm sorry to tell you guys, you might just be bots in the sim, because there's people really playing the game, and then there's NPCs. You might be an NPC. It's okay, and maybe you're right, but because you're right for you doesn't mean you're right for everybody else. You might end and then foof, and other people might end and go, wow, that was fun, can we play again? That's completely reasonable. Atheists might be saying, I know there's nothing beyond this, because for you there isn't. Right? That's okay. Now, if you're not worth your function, I suppose they might consider you, they might take you out in the update. Why is that reasonable? Because it is. You might just be right about you. God has game theory. Yeah, it's not far from that leather goddess of Phobos. But not game theory because it's not a game. It's actually simply a learning matrix. The entire purpose of this place is education and entertainment. Well, the religious wouldn't be the bots. The religious would be the toddlers. They would be the early learners who are interacting in the same sim with other more advanced learners, and they have to interact with them and deal with that because you're not always going to deal with beings in other planets and other societies and civilizations that are on the same level as you. So you got to learn charity. You got to learn how to interact, and the best way to start with that is with real people of your own kind, and then eventually you extrapolate that out in theory. So you don't believe in sim? You're an atheist? No, not by any means. I'm just saying that atheists who don't believe in God might be right about the fact that there's nothing after they die because after they die, they just de-res, right? Yeah. Want to see God Hal take some mushrooms? Yeah, see, this is why I don't need it. But where's God in that? Oh, beyond the actual material life, outside of this. So basically, like, think of it as high school or just primary school, college, life, and your own life beyond that. We're talking about Earth and life here as primary school. That is not and your parents going, you better get good grades, or you're gonna get left back. We're trying to teach you some baseline stuff so you can interact with the rest of life. And Earth is primary school. It's not the be all end all. And some people just stay in the school because they're assistant teachers or whatever. We've got a sim school, so some of the people in the sim school are fake. Most of them are real, and you interact with them. And then, after you leave the sim, there's still a life beyond that. And in that life beyond that, there's a life beyond your own death. That's still possible. Doesn't matter. That's not and it's unnecessary to the conversation about whether or not it's a sim or not. And again, this is your brain not on drugs. So, no way you're not a bot. Oh, you have no way of knowing that. It's an unfalsifiable. I'm sorry. This is your take. No, it's a take. Hal is anti-atheist. I'm hurt. No, I'm not. I'm saying that they very well may be correct, but they're only correct within the material aspect of the sim that we're in, from a quantum physics level. That this is an artificial universe. That some of the people here are here because we're using it as a learning matrix for humans that live thousands of years, and some of the people here are fake. And the people who are concerned about what happens after the life, or work to make sure they are, or have some kind of ghosty feeling that there might be something, that's because there is, but it's a material life. It's not a ethereal life. It's an actual flesh and blood living life outside of this earth experience. And that some people are like, yeah, there's nothing. It's not that they're wrong. They're right for them, right? No, you're the bot. No, you're the bot. Why? And by the way, if you're an atheist and you're getting upset at what I'm saying, I honestly don't know why. First of all, I'm talking about a thought experiment. This is not what is, this is one potentiality. And in this one potentiality, there would be a very valid reason for the existence of a thought form that atheists would have. And it would make total sense in that. But even still, if you believe we're all ashes to ashes, dust to dust and stuff, then what meaning does anything I have to say have at all, or even what you have to say? You are effectively meaningless. Right. Julie gets it. But if you're getting sensitive about it, I honestly don't know why. Without evidence, anything is a possibility. Well, no, I mean you can eliminate some possibilities without evidence, Jeff Becker. That's clearly true. You know, you don't need a body to prove that somebody was murdered if you have other elements. You don't have primary evidence. You have second, like, anecdotal evidence has some value. Circumstantial evidence, you can argue whether that's evidence or not. I would argue that there is circumstantial evidence for the argument that I'm making today about this, right? The existence of Claude Shannon's experiments, the life extension concepts being expressed, the growth of humanity and the sort of retrenchment, the those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it aspect of, oh, well, that's because they always teach the same thing in primary school. If you know it, you graduate, right? You can make people believe a lot of things for the right amount of money. Well, no, they won't believe it. They'll just take the money. D4MD, take all your tapes and your CDs. That's that you're quoting Bill Hicks. Uh, also not true. I mean, I appreciate where he's coming from because he was a huge like Hendrix fan. He was very specific to the kind of music that he liked. I also would argue that I cannot stand a lot of music that is effectively based on doing drugs. And I would have rather have the guys in Alice in Chains be touring with Lane Staley instead of him dead with his teeth falling out as a bloated body. And me not doing drugs or choosing not to do drugs does not denigrate the creativity of somebody who struggled with drugs or did drugs or chose not to do drugs. It's silly. All of humanity exists inside the human. Whether you use drugs or not to get them out is a matter of both the opinion about the ability of doing that. If the drugs do the talking, are you really telling your story? Or in the case of like Alice in Chains at one point, are you just doing heroin jingles? Are you basically just writing like a jingle for heroin? That's the argument. You have you're a fluke in the universe. You have no right to be here. Well, that's absurd. Then apparently I am, because the universe is in the business of making flukes. Deteriorated song, National Lampoon 72, talk a stoner into believing they don't exist. I don't know why they like a hippie or a stoner in the early 70s in that crowd gave a shit about anybody's rights other than their material comfort. That would basically boil down that the entire hippie movement for civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, and all that kind of stuff was really something they only did to quiet the noise so they wouldn't have to hear the screaming of other people. Like, can we get everybody rights so that they don't bug me anymore, as opposed to they genuinely care about people or are trying to shift society in a positive way, which I think is really what they were doing. But a 72 stoner, yeah, no. So yeah. Thanks, Carol. Yeah, I just don't think I need it. And you like some people are saying they like the t-shirt. This is my Maneka Neko t-shirt. I have two of these. I don't know where the other one is. They sold these at the fuck store was it? Blitzing on it right now. But I got it, and I've seen ones that are close, but this is one of the most comfortable t-shirts I own, and I wear it. How could you be a bot in this world? Oh yeah, absolutely, Kenneth. I could also be one of many expressions of myself in this world. So there's a concept in the simulation ideology, or concept, I don't even know that's an ideology. They don't ideate to it. So no, it would be in the theory that, like a fish in a tank of water, if you put your hand into the water, until the rest of your hand comes in, it looks like, for all practical purposes to them, 5 snakes coming into the water to the fish, because they can't see beyond the water. All they see are the 5 protrusions into their space. So for all they know, 5 snakes operate in their world. But they are all connected. They're all from the same hand. And so it's truly, what they're not seeing is, what they're seeing in this space is not 5 snakes, but a hand. And the same thing could be true and speak to a lot of what would be passive and active learning in our world space, meaning that some people go in because they're at school, some people hack their way in, other people go in on a recreational level. So the trick then is discerning, are you, not only are you alone here, but are there multiple yous here? Is the version of you outside of this so advanced and so smart and as a human being using so much of their brain that they can actually operate 2, 3, 5 people in this world at the same time? So while you're like taking AP classes while you're studying for your masters and that kind of stuff, you do a version of that where you go into this simulation and you live your life as a mathematician. You check off one of your boring lives. You live and die as a homeless person. You live as a king. You're a dictator and a fool, and you do them all kind of at once in the same time space. And if any of them interact, they feel an odd connection because they are in fact the same person. Yes, that's right. A madness to method. If you think of it like playing the piano, interacting together but all playing different notes. If there was proof of God, then God can exist. Well, yeah, because God would be material then, and it wouldn't be a God. It would simply be a middle management entity that's in a physical or quasi-temporal form that would just be in control of stuff. In which case, there's an argument that there might be, in terms of our lives on this planet, an overseeing entity that may be post-temporal or alien in some form that could be running things, and that's why it runs things like an asshole sometimes. Mm-hmm. That's the theory. I mean, I love this conversation. I think it's good to have. And again, what's the ultimate point of even these discussions about this stuff? The recognition that they can be discussed, which is a beauty, and is something that's relatively new to humans in our world. That we can discuss these things without cutting anybody's heads off or nailing anybody to anything. It's a beautiful thing. It's great. And what should you take away from any conversation like this, or any religious conversation somebody tells you about Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or any of that stuff? Ultimately, the only thing you can take away from it, the stories that you hear, the lessons that are attempted to be taught to you in these moments, exist in words and mental images that somebody can give you or try to give you or express to you. But what do you ultimately take away from it? Either it will affect your behavior and your way of looking at the world, or it will not. And if it affects your behavior and your way of looking at the world and makes you more bitter and sad and broken, then that is a choice you are making based on what you're hearing. And if it makes you feel better and it widens your view of the world, then it is a net plus. And the truth of the story the person told you, whether it was a piece of history or a parable, is immaterial because it is technically not material. but the material impact that it has is in your choices about what you're hearing. Does the story of Easter make you angry or hopeful? Does it, could you care less about it? Or does it make you curious about why people would believe certain things? And in those instances, is that curiosity based on a view of humans as weak, gullible, stupid, broken? Or does it create a view of like people are seeking meaning? Well, unknown variable, if you don't know any, that argument you're making, I appreciate it. Which is, we don't know anything, so just, live your life and don't be a dick. Live your life and don't be a dick is essentially a hipster version of the golden rule, which is treat others as you would like to be treated. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Turn the other cheek. Those are intrinsically, the worthwhile lessons of Christianity. And so you're in agreement with the better parts of it. You're in agreement with the better parts of that thought form. And so that's what you're taking away. That's the impact that it had. Right? So, HAL, not if they are sadistic. That's not, again, Tina, that's your focus. That's the focus you have to release. Because if all you see are the worst of the versions of these thought forms, you're never going to give a break to the people who are, in the middle of those thought forms. You're going to castigate them, and that's where division comes from. You are tattooing people with a hateful symbol. Turn the other cheek, Chris Rock. Well, he didn't hit back. And it made him the bigger man in that moment. Because it went a certain way, but it didn't have to. And you have to take everything I've said today in the context of who I am. As my mother would say all the time, consider the source. And intrinsically, I love people. I've met thousands upon thousands upon thousands of them, of all stripes and behaviors and levels of interesting and boring and all this stuff. And I love people. And as some of you know, I have done CPR 3 times. I only knew one of the people. Don, one of my students in my Kung Fu class, he was an old man who took the class from us at the Spectrum Health Club in Santa Monica, had a heart attack. I did CPR on him. He lived, thank God. The other 2 were strangers. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I don't care who you are. I don't have to agree with your politics. If you're within my locus of control to help you when you're in that desperate a situation in your life, I'm going to do it. That's who I am. I'm not telling anybody else how to be. And if I ever wanted to express a way for people to be in life, where I was like, I think more people should do this, then I would just do it all the time, which is what I do. That's why I do the afternoon show. It's why I started this That was the meaning. That's the meaning of the whole thing. I can't take your anger away, but I can dial down your bitterness with humor a little bit and make you feel heard on some other levels, I hope, which will give you that little bit of charitable wiggle room with your fellow humans instead of letting it be ratcheted up. That's it. And I've gone a half hour longer in the morning show than I normally do, but it's Good Friday, so it's a holiday for some people. So we got extra time. That said, that's why I'm going to keep doing it. And I hope that I continue to be able to give you that gift. That's it. That's all I'm going to work on. It's just, yeah. Oh, Chipple, do you want to say about? Hi. He's looking at a bag full of towels like he wants to attack it. Hold on. What you doing, buddy? Come here. You want to come up? Hi. Come here, buddy. Oh, he just walked over. Hi, buddy. You okay? Yeah, we love Chip. We love you, even when you're a monster. Even when you're a monster. So, if you feel like Easter is a good holiday in any of its forms, and you feel like it represents the better qualities of humanity, then keep it in mind as you walk around in the next few days and see how it informs your expression towards your fellow man. And if you believe that it's religious control and it's a mockery of humanity and it's terrible and whatnot, whatever the deepest, darkest recesses of your belief about religious thought are, then hopefully you will keep that in mind, and that will inform your charitable view of your fellow man or woman and how you treat them. Because if the bastardization of a religious belief you believe makes people do bad things, and you act equally bad in the world as a reflection of it, then you are just as much a victim of that thing as they are, and you reinforce its existence. If you believe religion is a misery machine and you're miserable even though you don't believe it, then it's won. It has won. And to everybody else, happy orgy weekend. Whatever that is. And I will see you guys later on this afternoon. All right.